All right, welcome back to another episode of the Dude Real Estate Show. I'm here with Billy once again. Billy, how are you?
Well, I'm excited for today's show. I think it's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, I think this is going to be interesting too. I don't think many people try to tackle this topic. So today we're going to
Mhm.
talk about real estate partnerships, but not necessarily the way you might think about it. A lot of us out there have a significant other, have a spouse. So how do we partner with them in a sense? Maybe not necessarily in the work involved with real estate investing, but how do we talk with them about it? How do we get them on board?
Mhm.
Um, in another video later in this series, we will talk more in depth about real estate partnerships, like on a JV level or like a partnership I have with my buddy. That's different. When it comes to there's a lot of feelings involved. There's a lot of uh, tied finances involved when it comes to a spouse or significant other. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I don't know where this is going to go. Hopefully,
Yeah.
I choose my words carefully.
Yeah.
Um,
Careful. Wife's watching.
so yeah, so how I have the reason I want to talk about this. It wasn't necessarily a huge problem with me, but it comes up from time to time. But I've heard people say, man, I am just on fire. I want to go out there and do real estate investing, but my wife or my girlfriend is just not on board and she doesn't want me to do it. And that may be the case. Maybe they just have a hang up about it. Maybe they had a bad experience. Maybe they don't trust you. I mean, that could be something to
Yeah.
talk about. Um, or it could just be fear because they don't know what it is.
Mhm.
Um, So I think when it comes to these conversations, it's just important to whether your spouse is initially, you get the feeling that they're on board or not, it's still
Mhm.
important to have an honest, open conversation. Be like, look, this is what I want to do. This is what I think it will look like. And this is how it's going to benefit us in the future.
Mhm.
Um, and then just have a conversation about it. Have them ask questions about it. Um,
Mhm.
Tell them what it's going to look like from a financial standpoint. Tell them what it's going to look like from a risk standpoint. Tell them what it's going to look like, from the financial side of things.
Mhm.
And then what you're going to have to potentially even sacrifice, whether it's time or money or could be a myriad of things. So you just need to initially have that open, honest conversation. Because if it starts out where it's just kind of like it's this hidden thing, then
Mhm.
there really could be some trust issues in the future as well.
Yeah.
So it's really important to be open, honest with your spouse or significant other when it comes to finances, when it comes to investing in real estate.
Mhm.
So yeah, just start from there, and then as things progress, they could go a few different ways. Like they could be totally on board. They'll be like, yeah, you know what? That does sound really interesting. I think real estate's interesting. Maybe they want to join with you in some way. Like some really good partnerships I've seen with, you know, spouses is like one is the realtor and the other one's kind of like the rehabber or something like that if they're flipping properties or
Mhm.
finding distressed deals that they might turn into a rental. Um, or maybe they're both realtors, or maybe one of them's really good at the books and the finance side of things and the other one's really good at finding deals. So sometimes you can mesh your skills together and actually become even more powerful as a team that way. But sometimes your spouse or significant other may not be that interested. Maybe they already have a job or they're doing other things. They're not really interested in investing in real estate. But I think it's still important for them to understand that you'll need, their blessing and their
Yeah.
support, just like you would support them in their endeavors. So I think where a lot of the fear comes and why some might say, I don't want you to do that, is just because they don't know what it all entails. So
Mhm.
I think one of the things that could be done if that's kind of the case, and even if it's not, even if they're kind of like, yeah, that sounds good, but maybe they're on the fence a little bit, is kind of bring them into your world. Don't go riding off solo into the sunset because they're just going to feel left behind.
Hmm.
you know, whatever got you excited about real estate investing, share that with them. For me, it was
Hmm.
the Bigger Pockets podcast. So my wife didn't really want to listen to it, but I would tell her stories from it and tell her interesting things that I learned from stuff like that. And when I was a realtor, she would hear, the crazy stories of being a realtor, the different things that I would have to go through for clients or things like that. Or she'd sometimes I'd bring her with on the properties I was flipping. Then of course it's always nice to show a big check too. So then that really helps people get on board is when when they can see
Yeah.
some money, or maybe you take them on a trip or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That helps quite a bit. Um, so yeah, I just bring them into your world and be like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm studying, this is what I'm reading and listening to, and this is how I'm learning things, this is how I'm going to kind of attack this, and this is what the benefits are going to be. So
Yeah.
I'll just I'll stop talking now and I'll open it up to you. What are some of your
Yeah.
thoughts or
So,
questions on some of
uh,
this?
yeah. So for you personally, how did you address that conversation? I have a picture in my mind of how I did it and how I plan to continue to do it. But how did you do it the first time? And then how are you doing it differently now? Or what did you learn?
Sure. Yeah. So the first, really the first go around was a job change for me.
Hmm.
Um, it was going from a marketing job to being a real estate agent, which was kind of a tough transition in a sense because you're commission based with being a realtor. So that was the scary part, I think, for my wife.
Hmm.
But it was kind of like, I still was part-time at my other job for a little bit. So
Hmm.
I had some money coming in, and we just had a conversation. It's like, once we have X number of dollars in my business account for like the real estate business, and I'm still able to take a draw from it, that's when um, I'd like to go full time as a realtor. And so that happened roughly 8 months after I got licensed
Hmm.
and hit that number and just went full time. And that was a great day. That was a really great day because I really didn't like my other job. So that was kind of the first thing,
Hmm.
but I didn't really get into investing for another year and a half or something like that.
Hmm.
And so the next conversation was more about like, okay, we have some funds.
Hmm.
I'd like to partner up with my buddy and invest in real estate. Now, honestly, if it had just been me saying that, she might have shot me down. I don't know. But because
Yeah.
she knows my buddy and trusts him, um, I think she thought like it was a good partnership,
Hmm.
and he was bringing the same amount of funds to the table as well. And we were going to do this together.
Yeah.
And so that conversation, while it was a fairly decent chunk of change, I mean, but real estate takes some money, right? So,
Hmm.
it's going to be a decent chunk of change most of the time.
Yeah.
Um, that conversation was like, okay, yeah, we have some money set aside over here that we're still okay with, but this
Hmm.
money, this is going to go into our real estate business and we're not going to touch it ever, pretty
Yeah.
much until we decide to take money out of the business. And so we just had that
Hmm.
conversation, and occasionally she checks in and she's like, are you guys making any money, or are the deals still going okay? Stuff like
Yeah.
that. And for the most part, yeah, things are going fine. So it's kind of that ongoing conversation. I think when you're just getting going or you're making some sort of bigger transition, that can be the tougher conversation to have or to navigate with a spouse.
Yeah. Yeah, the way I approached it with my wife is probably not, I don't know if it's good or bad, but I just did the same thing. We set aside an account that was okay. This is Billy's investing fund. Like he has full access to do whatever he sees as fit. But before you do any deal, I need to know about it and why it's a good deal. So she doesn't really love getting into the numbers like I do. I like looking at the numbers and talking about the numbers and everything numbers. But she wants to know, what is it? Why is it making money? And just kind of the big picture stuff that is like, okay, this is why he thinks it's a good deal. And that's the one rule that we still have going forward is always like you can't do a deal without me knowing about it.
Right.
Uh, so that's been our big thing so far is doing that. And then things that even deals that have gone bad or gone well, it's usually like, well, I kind of had a feeling that that was going to happen when you were talking about it, because you said, well, I didn't like this, and this when I was explaining it to her, because I'm pretty honest about it. So um, honestly, I think it's almost like a bank checking my numbers and my deal, because I have to explain it to the boss, I guess, in my mind.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No, no, that's really smart that you kind of review every deal with her. I think that's a good thing to do because it
mm,
keeps her in the loop.
yeah,
And then she sees that big picture. And it sounds like intuitively she understands enough now where it made sense that that deal went sideways, so
right.
maybe she can be more of a sounding board in the future and be like, hey,
Hmm.
what do you think about this one, instead of telling her this is the deal we're doing and this is kind of some of it, but maybe she'll have a little more confidence to have some input on something, if she has a certain feeling, because some people are very intuitive. I am, and my wife is as well, and some people are not.
Hmm.
So it's nice to tap into that if you have that
Hmm.
at your disposal. Yep.
Yeah, 100% agree. I'd like to think I'm intuitive, but
Do you do
sometimes,
you do you know
yeah.
what your personality type is? Do you know your Myers Briggs or anything like that?
Oh, it's been a couple of years since I've done that. Let's see. I don't remember off the top of my head. My wife could tell you. She did a different test with me this last week. I don't know what it was called, but I know I fit in perfectionist and success was like the two things that like I scored highest on, or would be what you'd classify me as.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So you just got to play to your strengths,
exactly.
and know where your weaknesses are too with something like that. But that's why partners are great, because a lot of times they do balance us out in certain ways, whether it's in a real estate partnership where it's just
Hmm.
you're doing a deal or two together, or it's your spouse or significant other. Like,
Hmm.
a partnership is really important. It's such a hard real estate, such a hard thing to do all alone.
Yes.
Like, you never do it completely alone. There's always a lot of people involved, and you have like a lot of little mini partnerships, which are
Hmm.
fine in like a transactional sense most of the time. But there are these bigger partnerships, like if you do partner up with someone in an LLC,
Hmm.
or you have your spouse, then
Hmm.
it's another aspect that can really, it can make or break you in a lot of cases. So
Yeah.
yeah, any other thoughts on, have you had any like difficult conversations about stuff like that? Or it seems like you guys pretty much did it in a very open and honest way. Like, some people don't even have that conversation, and
Hmm.
then they, and then all of a sudden they're fighting with their significant other and they wonder why. Because
Yeah.
it's kind of a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah. I think there's been some times where it's like, well, we talked about this before being an issue, and like you reassured me that it was going to be okay. So I think, and you weren't going to make a big deal about this. You were going to care. You were going to handle it yourself. So I think that's the big thing is, you know, when you see a deal, you sometimes get a little bit emotional about it, whether it's any asset class. You're like, well, I like this, and you go to your significant other and you say, hey, like I like this. Here's why, and you really try to sell it to them, and they have such a outside perspective from you've already fallen in love with it. They can be like, well, no, I think these are the flaws in what you're looking at, and you continue to sell it, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So I think it's good to have that outside eyes looking at what you're doing and what you're thinking about doing. So
Yeah, it's nice to have someone that's a little detached. Sometimes a problem
yeah.
can happen with partnerships like what I have with my buddy. We can both fall in love with a deal,
Yeah.
and then uh-oh, it's like,
Yeah.
what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, so you have to be pretty careful. But luckily, in partnerships like that, as long as you're aware of your strengths and weaknesses and what the other partner brings to the table,
Hmm.
then it can mitigate some of that risk.
Yeah.
But you certainly do have to be careful. One other thing I was going to mention when it comes to your spouse or significant other, is, you know if you expect to get support out of them and you want them to trust you with what you want to do, then you really need to reciprocate with them.
Hmm.
They might have something that they're super interested in. Maybe they want to sell stuff on Etsy, or they want to transition to a different career and they need to go back to school. So I think
Hmm.
it's just important to keep in mind that, it's not all about us.
Yeah.
Our spouses and significant others have goals and dreams too, and we
Mhm.
need to support them and help them out wherever we can when it comes to all that stuff.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I think it's a two-way street. Like it's not a one-way. We both got to work together. We both might want to go down different paths, but we've got to support the other because that's going to ultimately make us both more happy. And like you
Right.
said last time with goals, I mean, it's more than just your business that you want to succeed. You want to succeed in your relationships, your health. Really, real estate is, part of the puzzle to make you happy. So yeah, I 100% agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, we're doing this not just for ourselves, we're doing this for our significant others and for our families. This is
Mhm.
so that we can spend more time with them, so that we can provide for them in the
Mhm.
way that we want to, stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
when it comes down to it, it's not just because, oh, I want more money, I want this real estate empire. It's because you want to
Mhm.
care for your family. So, I
Mhm.
think those are all really good things. It's just that we need to explain and have these conversations, especially
Mhm.
initially when getting started out with something like this. So,
Yeah.
yeah, cool, man. Well, I think that wraps up this one, but
Mhm.
we have plenty more to go. So, everyone, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.